Hey gang, it's Patrick. Uh, as I step off in the new direction that I'm trying to take the channel in, I find myself doing something kind of fun. I conducted my first celebrity interview last week on the 21st, when I got the chance to sit down and chat with Vic Mignogna from Star Trek Continues. We talked about the show, talked a little bit about Star Trek Adventures of the Game, but mostly we talked about the show and our relationship. Each of us talked about our relationship to Star Trek and how we got there. He gave me a good chunk of time. Without further ado, though, I think I'm going to sign off here and fade into the interview. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Hey crew, welcome back. Most of you who know me know that I'm very picky about a lot of my Star Trek, so when I find fan productions that I really like, I like to promote them. Today I have got with me the creator and star of Star Trek Continues, Mr. Vic Mignogna. Welcome.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. It's a pleasure to join you, Patrick.
Gosh, I don't even know where to start. So
let's start with me apologizing for looking like a scumbag. I'm on my way to the gym as soon as we're done with our interview, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to look so horrible. But
hey, I'm wearing a t-shirt and the worst possible pair of torn up jeans right now. So the whole COVID dress code has become a
yeah.
Gosh.
Well, let me just say that it's a pleasure to join you, and let me say that of all the things I've done in my life, probably Star Trek Continues might be the thing I'm most proud of. It incorporated more of me and my own vision and imagination and childhood fantasy and dream than anything else. And it's an honor that so many, it's so humbling there's no other word but humbling that so many people have enjoyed it as much as
it really caught my eye. I guess because you've gotten some very cool people to come and play with you along the way here.
Yes.
What actually sold me on it the first time when I first saw the first episode, Pilgrim of Eternity. How did you get Chris Doohan to step into his dad's not inconsiderable boots?
People often assume that was difficult. I will tell you this: Chris does not consider himself an actor. Chris works in the medical field. He's never been an actor. He did, of course, show up in Star Trek: The Motion Picture and The Wrath of Khan with his dad, but he was an extra. I mean, he didn't have to do much but just stand there and look good in uniform, and he did, but it didn't demand much of him performance-wise. As I was putting the cast together, I had remembered seeing a picture of him somewhere and thinking, man, he sure looks a lot like his dad. I wonder if he's got any experience. And I contacted him on Facebook and I asked him if he'd meet me for lunch. And he agreed. We both lived in LA at the time. And so we met for lunch, and I actually even took with me a couple of phasers from our series. We have, I don't know if you know this, but we have uniquely designed phasers for Star Trek Continues.
I seem to remember reading that somewhere, yeah.
Right. They, at a glance, they look like the original TOS phasers, but if you look at them more closely, there have been some adjustments to kind of move toward next generation. And so I took those with me to lunch, and then I told him basically what I wanted to do. I told him that I had this idea and that I wanted to finish the 5-year mission. And we had a great lunch. We really connected. He's a wonderful guy, really kind-hearted, good guy. And I think he felt confident about the quality of what we were going to do. That's really the big thing. When you approach somebody like John Delancey,
Yeah.
or an Aaron Gray, or a Colin Baker, or a Nicola Bryant, or a Lou Ferrigno, on the list goes. When you contact them about something like this, the main concern they're going to have is what kind of quality are we talking about? Because I don't want to appear, after being a professional in the field and having experienced a level of success, I don't want to appear in some, in some low quality fan thing with cardboard sets, you know what I mean? And a bunch of guys that don't belong in Starfleet uniforms, if you know what I'm talking about,
Indeed.
playing Star Trek. It makes them look bad. And so the first question anybody has, Mike Forrest, Apollo.
Yeah.
The first question he had was, well, what kind of quality are we talking about here? And I told him, look, I have been a part of fan productions. I know how bad they can be, unprofessional, let's put it that way. I know how mediocre they can be. This is not going to be that. I'm going to bring in people who are actors, who know how to communicate the emotion and the passion of a good story. And that's the most important thing. We are going to tell good stories. We're going to write stories that are akin to the original series stories that were so thought-provoking,
Yeah.
and imaginative. Most fan productions are very shallow. They're like Captain Kirk fights the Klingons, or we beam down, we flip open communicators, we play, right?
Yeah.
We play like we were when we were kids. That's our dream, is to be in uniform and see ourselves flipping open a communicator and beaming down to a planet and shooting phasers. But that's not a story.
No, it's not.
Fine. Please don't get me wrong, Patrick. That's fine. If that's what you want to do, God bless you. Live and let live. But if you really want to make classic Star Trek, you have to have a thought-provoking story.
Absolutely.
With a thought-provoking theme. And in order to communicate such a story, you need good actors.
Absolutely.
And you need a good script.
And
Script writing.
I absolutely, Pilgrim Return sold me, because, like I say, I was mostly interested. Okay, they got Chris interested, and then I watched and it's like, holy cow, they aren't fooling around. So, I really enjoyed that. I don't know if I've given Lisa enough hat tips for the work she did aging and de-aging Michael Forrest.
Yes.
Because that was
Lisa Hansel, and let me take this minute to even thank her and praise her myself. Lisa Hansel, Tim Vidito, her husband, and their entire makeup team, from the very first episode on to the very last episode, did so many amazing things and helped us accomplish the dream.
Speaking of makeup and the caliber of people you brought in, how did you convince Lou Ferrigno to put on green body paint again? Because I was definitely under the impression that he was tired of that.
Oh, not easily at all. In fact, you know what? A week before the show, a week before we went to shoot that episode, Lou contacts me and says, "Hey, can I be blue?" And I'm like, "Lou, I'm sorry, no. Orions are green." And then he got to the studio, like he came down to start the shoot, right? We're going to shoot tomorrow morning, and we're at dinner the night before, and he says to Lisa Hansel, "Can you make me blue instead?" And he was still trying to get out of it. And Lisa told him the same thing. She's like, "Lou, I'm sorry, but like the Orion species are green." And I even told him, "Louis, do you know how much the fans are going to freaking love seeing you green?" And he said to me, and I quote, "Don't make me look like the Hulk." I said, "Bro, you are going to look so badass. You are going to look nothing like the Hulk. I want you bald with a goatee with long, like Fu Manchu mustache with beads on the end of it. And you're going to be so cool looking.
Oh,
And he's like, okay, just don't make me look like the Hulk. And of course, he didn't at all. And he did such an amazing job. He was made for that role.
It was incredible. I've got special needs kids. My youngest has Down syndrome. My oldest boy is autistic. So we pay attention to things like that. I wanted to thank you for not dubbing Lou. I mean, it was so cool to hear his actual voice. Because my stupid Lou Ferrigno story. I don't think they had started the reunion movies to kind of close out the story, but the series itself had ended. I think he was opening a gym in Houston. And I was 17, 18 years old. So this was 35 some odd years ago. So I said, oh, hell, I'll go out and meet the Hulk. Yeah, sure. And I met him, and like most stupid 17-year-old kids, I tried to give him a squeeze on the handshake. He let me keep my hand. But he reminded me that he was, in fact, the Incredible Hulk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he is a big dude, big hands, strong man. But let me tell you something, Patrick. Let me tell you how Lou got involved. I do a lot of Comic-Con events, like signings and stuff, because of my animation voice work. And I had done several events with Lou. I mean, there are, if you've ever been to a Comic-Con, there are 20 or 30, 40 different actors there from different shows and stuff. And I had done several events with Lou up to this point. And we became friends. One night we were at a convention. I don't even remember what city it was in, but he and I ended up downstairs at the bar in the lounge to have a drink. And I was in the middle at that point in time, we were building the sets. We hadn't even shot the first episode yet. And we're sitting there having a drink, and Lou says, so what are you working on right now? And I said, it's funny you should ask. I'm a big Star Trek fan since I was a little kid, and I want to make a Star Trek episode where I get to fulfill my childhood dream of playing Captain Kirk, and I want to make an episode like I remember Star Trek. And I pulled out my phone, and I showed Lou some pictures of the sets in progress of being built. And he said to me, man, when I was a little kid, I loved Star Trek too. And he said, if there's ever a role I can play, I would love to do it. Now, Patrick, how many roles are there going to be for a 6'7", huge, monstrous, muscular guy, right?
Right.
So when he said it to me at the time, my thought in my mind was, wow, that's really great that Lou Ferrigno would like to be a part of your series, but what role would he ever play? So we shot Pilgrim of Eternity. While we were editing Pilgrim of Eternity, a friend of mine submitted a story idea about an Orion slave girl that stows away on the Enterprise, and she wants out of this slave trading industry and wants protection, right?
Right.
The original script had no Zamenhof. He was not in the original script. When my friend submitted the idea to me and we started writing the script, it popped back in my mind that Louis Ferrigno said he wanted to be a part of an episode. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, what if we write in a character who is the owner of this slave girl and he comes out to claim his property? And of course, Orions are green, and he fit. I thought, oh my gosh, he would be perfect for this.
Yeah, you see all the big Orion dudes on Enterprise.
Right. So I submitted the idea to him, and he happily agreed, and he did a great job. And may I say something about dubbing his voice? I thought about it, because what's the point of having great dialogue if you can't understand the dialogue? I mean, that's not personal. That's just a standard you have to set, right?
Right.
I mean, if you could have the greatest script ever written, and if for whatever reason it's hard to understand what the actors are saying, what's the point of having a great script? So when we finished shooting the episode, and I was editing the episode, I was thinking, oh my goodness, there are several lines here that you can't really tell what he's saying. I'm not even saying why. I'm just saying it was hard to understand. The mic might not have been in a good place, any number of reasons.
Right.
So I contacted Lou and I said, Louie, I want to dub your role. However, do you want to do it, or do you want me to have it done? And he immediately goes, I want to do it. And I said, okay. And we went down to a studio, our sound man, Ralph Miller. We went to his studio down outside of LA, Louie and myself, and we had the certain scenes that had lines of dialogue that I wanted to replace because they just needed to be clear.
Yeah.
And Lou did it. And so that is him. Like you said, that is him in the episode. And I can't tell you how much it means to me for you to say that, because I've never heard that before, Patrick. I've done thousands of interviews, talked to thousands of people about Star Trek Continues and about Lolani, that episode, and no one has ever said what you just said to me. And so I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Oh,
I can see how that would be. I can see how that would be an encouragement to special needs people, and I appreciate you saying that.
Well, I say it stood out because I'd heard him speak before. I knew that he was deaf, and it's like, oh wow, they didn't they didn't get somebody in ADR to replace it. So I was very happy to see.
Yeah, and he did a really great job with it too. He was, you know what, Louis is one of the hardest workers I've ever seen.
Oh, and he's a lot of people I know, especially back in the day, they wrote him off because he was, Mr. Universe and big muscle guy. And I happen to have gotten the box set of The Incredible Hulk for Christmas, and we've been rewatching the series. And a lot of what he does, that takes a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
He really, got a lot across for never actually having dialogue.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is its own special challenge to communicate a character without speaking. That's a challenge in and of itself. But for our series, you might think, Patrick, that Lou Ferrigno comes down to do this little quirky fan film, and he kind of dials it in because, hey, he's Lou Ferrigno, and this is a nothing little fan production. Not the case. He came down there and he was committed to making it everything that I wanted it to be. So when we were shooting a scene, he would do a scene, and I would take him aside after, and I'd say, hey, try this for me, or let's do this. And he wouldn't say, no, I'm Lou Ferrigno and I already did it. You've got a good take from me. Let's move on. No, he was so happy to do anything that I wanted to do because he wanted to honor my vision. And he worked at it until it was good, until it was the best it could be. Same with the ADR. He kept doing it until he felt good about it and I felt good about it. He's got such a high level of commitment to doing the best job he can. And our entire series was full of people like that.
Oh yeah, I don't remember anything that seemed dialed in.
And I will tell you that every actor, celebrity, every celebrity actor who we brought in to play a guest starring role, when they walked into our set and they met all the people involved, and they saw the level of quality that we were producing, they rose to the challenge. They realized that they couldn't just phone it in. They realized that if they just gave a lackluster, mediocre performance, that they were going to look really bad because everybody else was giving it their A game. And
Right.
the production was of such a level that if they didn't, they would stick out.
And I sat down and started making a list. And you went and got a lot of people. You had both Battlestar Galacticas. You had Aaron Gray from Buck Rogers, Lou, John Delancey, doctors and companions.
Yeah, from Doctor Who. Daniel Logan from Star Wars. Claire Kramer from Buffy. Cass Anvar from The Expanse. Gigi Edgley from Farscape.
Oh yeah, I great. I was going to bring up dragons here in a few minutes, but yeah. That was,
Nakia Burris from Power Rangers. We had a lot of great guest stars, and that was my intention from the very beginning, was to bring people in from other popular sci-fi and pop culture franchises to do cameos.
So I'm taking it you met Aaron Gray also on the con circuit?
Yes. Aaron and I became great friends. She's a wonderful lady. And we actually, as you know, she appeared in Lolani on screen. She was just on screen. And telling Kirk to give Lolani back to Zalmanhan because they didn't want to create an international incident and interplanetary, I should say, incident. And then when James Kerwin, our wonderful James Kerwin, wrote the story and the script for episode 7, Embracing the Winds, we had a Commodore in the episode, and we're like, hey, let's see if Erin will come back, and this time we'll fly her down to the studio and she'll be on camera and she'll have a much more substantial role. And she was happy to do it, and she did a great job.
Yeah, huge childhood crush. I was like 13 when Buck Rogers came out.
She was beautiful, wasn't she?
Oh my gosh.
That dark hair and those light blue eyes. Yeah, she was. I had the same crush on her when I was 15 or 17 or whatever.
Yeah, and they don't give that character enough credit because she's a beautiful lady, but Wilma Deering on Buck Rogers was not to be messed around with.
Yeah, she was a tough lady. Yeah,
she was not to be messed around with. See, I had a real personal connection with a couple of the episodes, so I was wanting to get kind of a feel. The White Iris. What was kind of the impetus for that? Because that one, and I'll explain in a few minutes, but that one hit me hard.
I will tell you. Even as a kid, I never liked the image of Captain Kirk as a womanizer. People always make jokes. There's this stereotype, right, of Captain Kirk just sleeping with every woman from every planet, anybody he meets, just hitting the sack with him and then leaving. And as somebody who revered the character, I didn't like that image of him at all.
Yeah, I didn't care for it either.
In my mind, Captain Kirk was very lonely in command, the loneliness and the isolation of being in command. And he was very desirous for love. He was always looking for that right one. And because he was so eager for it, anytime he met a woman that he even thought, maybe this is the one, he would just throw himself in full on, both feet, just jump in.
Yeah.
And it would turn out that she had to die for history, for history to unfold properly, or she was an android, or any of a number of different reasons, right?
Yeah.
Why it never worked out. So the impetus was for episode 4 was Captain Kirk was not a womanizer. He genuinely loved these women from his past. And Captain Kirk carries with him, even now, a great deal of remorse and pain and unresolved closure about these women from his past. And if he could only go back and get some closure with these ladies from his past. So that was the impetus of the story. The story began as Kirk starts seeing ghosts from his past loves, and they want something from him, and he doesn't know what it is. And he has kept it down for so long and shoved it inside for so long, and now it's erupted to the surface to the point where he can't even remember the passcode for this planetary defense system, because his mind, his conscience, if you will not allow him to be free of this until he deals with it, with these past women. And of course, with the help of the counselor, he figures out that it's not them who need closure, it's him. He needs closure.
Yeah.
And so by means of the holodeck, he's able to relive these moments with these women and say what he needed to say to get closure. And one by one, he's able to get closure. And of course, as you know, he finishes with the 3 women and he still doesn't have closure, and he still can't remember the password. Well, it's because of the little girl, the ghost of the little girl. And what I love is that the whole episode, if you're a Star Trek fan, you're going, okay, well, I know who Miramani is, and I know who Edith Keeler is, and I see who this Nakia is from the Farragut, from Kirk's past, but who's this little girl that's running around? I don't remember her. And it was such a perfect sense of closure, because can you imagine if Kirk carries guilt and shame about Miramani being stoned because she stood with him, or Edith Keeler having to die and him having to let her die. If he carries guilt about that, imagine the guilt he must carry that Miramani was carrying their child.
I don't have to.
When she died.
See, I don't have to imagine that. Before I met my wife, the woman I was with, we got pregnant. And we weren't in a great place to start with, but I said, okay, we'll try to make this work. And she lost the baby. And we never quite, we weren't quite far enough along, to know what gender the baby was or anything like that. And it wound up, wrecking the relationship. And then I met my wife, and life is a lot better. But when Sarah came out and said, "You never gave me one. What's your name? You never gave me one," I had to stop, because I knew exactly what was going on right then. It's like, yeah, I never did either. So, I mean, that wrecked me. And, but for the right reason, it's like, okay, I know what that character is going through right now.
It's cathartic. There's a catharsis to it.
I still have I still have trouble getting through that one. But where did you find that little girl?
Oh my gosh. I was just going to tell you, as soon as you finished your thought, I was going to tell you about this. The original script idea was supposed to be a little boy. When I was younger, I always imagined having a son and bringing him up, you know what I mean? Man to son,
Yeah.
father to son. So I wanted it to be a boy, and it was for the first several iterations of the script. While we were shooting the Mirror episode, fairest of them all, there was a guy who came down. It's a long story, but there was a guy that lived in South Carolina named Abraham Dunas. And Abe was brought down to our set for that shoot to help shoot some behind the scenes pictures or shoot some behind the scenes videos. I didn't know him. Our assistant director brought him in. He was friends with our AD. Our AD called me and said, hey, I want to bring a friend of mine down to shoot behind the scenes stuff. And I said, fine. I didn't know him. So Abe shows up and he brings his daughter with him. His daughter's name is Sarai. Adorable, sweet little girl. Everybody on set just kind of falls in love with her. She's so sweet. And she's wide-eyed and loves what's happening. She loves Mr. Spock. She loves Captain Kirk. She loves all of this, right? And I think we were probably even developing episode 4 while we were shooting episode 3. You know, there's always some overlap.
Right.
And getting ready for the next episode while you're shooting the current episode. And at some point, when I started thinking about casting, and I started thinking, okay, what little boys do I know? Like, who do I know that has a 7 or 8 year old, 6-year-old, whatever little boy, much less one that could stand in front of the camera and do this. And as I was talking to somebody about it, I honestly don't remember. It may have been James Kerwin. I don't remember. I don't remember who it was. It was somebody on our production team.
Yeah.
As I was talking to them, they said, well, are you married to the idea of it being a boy? And I said, well, I mean, I always imagined it being a son, that Kirk would have a son that he never got to have a relationship with. And I said, why? And they said, well, you met Abe's little girl on the last shoot. And I went, oh my God. Oh my God. And then I started thinking about the fact that she's Miramani's daughter.
Yeah.
And Miramani had long, dark, black hair, right? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this would be perfect. And so we changed it to a little girl and called Abe immediately and said, would Sarai be willing to do it? Would you be willing to come down and bring Sarai? And would she be willing to do this? And he said, let me talk to her. So later that day, or the next day, Abe sends me a text message. And you know what it is? It's a picture of Sarai smiling, and she's wearing an Indian headband. As if to say she would be happy to do it. So.
Well, she absolutely broke my heart. It was, just
in the best way.
Oh yeah, I was just like, oh my, the tears were shed.
Oh yeah, and you know what? A lot of people have said that as well, and that's a lot of people ask me what my favorite episode is, and it would be really very, very difficult for me to choose a favorite because I was so intricately involved with every element of every episode
Yeah, that'd be like asking
that
which
it
one's your
would be
favorite
hard to
kid.
pick just one. Exactly. It would be hard, very, very difficult. But I will say this. When it comes to story, White Iris was probably my favorite story because I always wanted to see a more human side of Captain Kirk.
Right.
Back in the 60s, the hero was always the hero. The hero always saved the day. He always made the right choice. He always came out on top. And to me, it was very impactful to see that Captain Kirk is a flawed human being, just like you and I.
Right.
And he has his own set of regrets and shame and remorse and guilt. And it would make him more relatable. And you know what, Patrick? I read an article years ago about the plans to make Star Trek Phase 2.
Right.
And in this article, Shatner was even quoted as saying that had there been another TV series, that he wanted to make Captain Kirk more human, more fallible. He wanted to portray a side of him that more people could relate to.
Right.
And I thought, wow, we did that. We did that. We made it. In fact, it's one of my favorite episodes of the original series is Requiem for Methuselah with the android girl Reyna. And
Right.
the reason that it's one of my favorites is because of the last scene
If I could
where
only
Kirk
forget
is
her.
sitting in his quarters, just overcome with shame of how he acted. And
Right.
for the first time, and possibly the only time in the original series, you see a side of Kirk where he's like, man, did I ever act like an idiot or what? If only I could forget what an idiot I was. How foolish, how pathetic. We behaved pretty poorly, didn't we? He says to Spock, right?
Right.
A very old and lonely man and a young and only man and lonely man.
Yeah.
We put on a pretty poor show, didn't we? If only I could forget. Even as a 14-year-old or 13-year-old or whenever I saw that episode for the first time, I sat there going, oh my gosh, he's a flesh and blood human just like me.
Yeah, I was probably about 8 when I saw it. You know, we're close to the same age, but you're much better preserved than I am.
Well, I don't know about that.
I had something. Dragons, coming up between dragons. Mostly because I was a Farscape fan, and it's like, oh wow, they got Gigi to do this. So
yes.
And that was another one. It didn't hit me as hard as Iris's did, but not having the best relationship with my dad, I was like, okay, yeah, I identify with an 8-foot tall rock creature.
Yes. Well, let me, if I may, Patrick, let me give you the genesis of that episode.
Please.
We were down at the studio shooting episode 5, Divided We Stand. And there was a guy named Greg Dykstra who contacted us and was a fan of our series. To that point, we'd only had the four episodes. Turns out Greg works at Pixar. He is a sculptor, a character designer and sculptor at Pixar.
Cool.
And he contacted me and he told me how much he enjoyed our series. And I invited him to come down. So he flew down while we were shooting the Civil War episode. He flew down And I made him the doctor in that episode, the one that was working with McCoy.
Right.
His name was Dr. Heath, was his character's name. I don't think you ever heard his name, but he just played the doctor in the little surgical tent. While we were shooting that episode, we went out to dinner every night after we would shoot all day, and we'd all go to a restaurant that night. And while we were out at dinner, Greg was sitting beside me at dinner. And he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Hey, I don't know if this is the right time or place, but I have a story idea for an episode." Now, I will be honest with you, Patrick, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that.
Oh, yeah.
By this point, I had probably received 50 story ideas and treatment ideas that were mostly pretty lame. And I had already, as I told you, I'd already set the bar very high in my mind for the kind of stories we were going to tell.
Right.
So when he said that at dinner, I thought, oh, God. Here we go. He proceeded to tell me a story about a creature that busts through the hull of the Enterprise. And everyone's afraid of the creature. They're trying to find the creature. And what they ultimately realize is that this big, scary-looking creature is actually just a child. And he's running from his parent who is abusive. Now, when he told me this story, my jaw was on the table for two reasons. First, because it was a great story idea. It was a classic Star Trek theme story about a real problem in an imaginative setting. But the second reason why my jaw was on the ground, on the table, was because I had never told anybody this, Patrick. But I wanted to do at least one creature episode. There were so many creature episodes in the original series, right?
Yeah.
There was the Horta and the Gorn and the Salt creature and all these different creatures, and they were guys in rubber suits, right?
Right.
Back in the 60s, there was no CGI. They were guys in rubber suits. And I thought, I want to do one of those episodes. But again, not just for the sake of doing it, it has
Right.
to be a good story. So in the back of my mind, I had always, somewhere in the back of my mind, thought, man, if only I could come up with a story about a creature that was a really good, thought-provoking story with a great message. But I hadn't come up with one. And I hadn't even told anybody that, I don't think. And here comes Greg Dykstra coming down to be a part of our series with no thought that he had a story idea. And while we were shooting episode 5, he told me this idea. And I'm like, dang, that's our next episode. Get to writing it, Greg. Do you want to write this? Can you write the script? Do you want to just write the story? You want me to have somebody else write the screenplay? Or can you write the script? And he said, well, I'd like to take a shot at the script. I said, great. And so he did, and we kicked it back and forth and several revisions. And
There it was.
That's how episode 6 came into being.
Wow.
And P.G. Edgley was another person that I met through the convention circuit. Just like Aaron Gray, just like Lou Ferrigno, just like Colin Baker, just like John Delancey. And James Kerwin knew Colin Baker as well. So when he suggested him, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I know Colin. He's a great, wonderful man. So almost all of our guest stars we met as a result of doing conventions together.
Cool.
And of course, by the time you've written, produced, and released 3 or 4 or 5 episodes, it is very clear the level of quality that you're working with. You know,
Indeed.
I could send a clip to John Delancey and go, this is what we're doing. And he could be like, oh, well, okay. I get it, you know.
Yeah. I told almost no one I was going to be doing this because I didn't want to jinx it too badly. And then we had the technical issues, but one of my friends said, do you think my son could ask a question? So he sent me a question. They're adapting your favorite book into film, and they come to you and say, hey, Vic, we have a spot for you to play character X. What story and what character is this?
Oh my goodness. What an amazing question. Wow. What an amazing question.
He's a smart kid.
Clearly. Well, I'll be honest with you. Nothing specifically comes to mind, but let me just tell you this. Captain Kirk was always my father figure. My parents divorced when I was 9, and my dad was out of the picture. And that was at the exact moment I discovered Star Trek. My mom and I had just moved into a tiny apartment. Dad wasn't around. We had a little 19-inch black and white television. We didn't even have a table for it. It sat on the floor in the living room, and I would lay on the floor and watch it. And I discovered Star Trek at that time in my life. And I immediately latched on to Shatner and his portrayal of this character, and it resonated with me so much. And so, I would dare say that I've already had the privilege to play the character in the role that meant the most to me. So while it's an amazing question, and please tell your friend's son that I'm blown away by the question, I don't really have a specific character from a book in mind.
That's cool.
But having said that, I have already gotten the chance to play my favorite character of all time.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, my dad, my folks split. I was probably 5 or 6 years old. It was between kindergarten and first grade. For all that Dad and I didn't get along all the time, he tried. I've got to give him credit for that. And he is, in fact, who introduced me to Star Trek. He had, when I was 4 years old, he had a model of the Enterprise hanging in his office.
Yeah, well, that's often the case. A lot of people's dads introduced them to Star Trek.
I was a fan up until that point. When I was 10, he sent me the Franz Joseph technical manual.
Yes.
And that was the day I became a Trekkie. I was like, okay, there we are. So we had our issues. I always got the trouble between Usti and his father, and I got that. I kind of understood that in Dragons. So
yeah.
As we keep circling around, I know you do voiceovers for some of the video games. Matter of fact, I think I'm stuck in a spot on Star Trek Online right now, and you're my captain.
Yes, Captain Garrett.
I will eventually figure out how to get things to work. I don't do video games very well. I do tabletop stuff.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Me neither.
Do you game?
No.
Do you?
No.
Are you interested? We can we can hook you up.
I never have. I've never done much of that. I mean, the last video game I ever played with any regularity was Donkey Kong Jr.
Oh my gosh.
And that was in an arcade. It wasn't at home.
Many quarters being fed to Galaga.
Oh yes. Yes.
I've had many a quarters of and much of my allowance,
Yes.
25 cents at a
Asteroid.
time. I bring up the role playing game though because I actually wrote for one.
Oh, cool.
And I think in one of my emails I sent you a piece that I had written that someone said, "Wow, this really sounds like Captain Kirk."
Now, I've not read this yet,
Ah,
so I'm going to give it my best cold read. Okay. Ready?
I'm ready.
Will. I imagine that Starfleet Command has already contacted you about the loss of the Constellation and your father's death. He died in the line of duty, as I noted in my log, but logs and reports only tell you what happened. They don't always tell you why. There are going to be rumors floating around Starfleet Command about why they happened. I wanted you to hear that from me. Your dad lost control, Will. He lost his crew under horrific circumstances. And when he tried to redeem himself, he lost himself. Only for a moment, but that's the moment that a lot of people are going to fix on. They won't see the man who fought the devil for his crew against all odds. They won't even see the man who sacrificed himself to show us how to kill the thing. They'll see the man who turned into Ahab, chasing the white whale through System L374 at any cost. They'll also project it onto you in the years to come. Like father, like son, they'll tell you. You'll turn out the same way. Hard as it is, hard as it will be to take that, don't let it bother you. There are worse things in life than turning out like Matt Decker. He was a decorated officer, a starship commander, and a Starfleet Commodore. He was a good man, Will, and he died a hero. Sincerely, Jim Kirk.
Thank you so much.
Nice writing.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is definitely something I could hear him saying and writing. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I haven't done a whole lot for the game, but every now and then I find something that I can look back and say, "Oh, hey, I'm actually proud of writing that." So
you should be. You should be. We've got about 4 minutes left. You any other questions about Star Trek Continues?
While it was a going concern that you had the nonprofit, and it had a very cool mission. Is the nonprofit still a going concern now that the series is over? Or I didn't know if you like managed to, if like the Neutral Zone studio tours, contributed to that for like a scholarship fund or anything like that.
No. The Neutral Zone tours are completely a separate independent thing.
Okay.
The sets are now owned by Ray Tessie, who is the man behind Neutral Zone Studios. And I would like to encourage you, actually, and any of your listeners or viewers, to go to Neutral Zone Studios for two reasons. Number one, donate something. Ray Tessie is not interested in making one penny on the sets. He's not interested in profiting from the sets. He only wants to keep the bills paid for the rent on the building and the utilities so that he can continue to have the sets standing and available, not just for fans like you and me all over the world to come and see them, but also for other fans to come and shoot their dream to shoot a Star Trek thing at those sets. There are a lot of fans out there that would love to shoot something, but they could never afford to build the sets. Well, that's been done. The sets are built, they're standing, and they're available to any fans that want to shoot something. But somebody's got to pay the rent.
Right.
And somebody's got to pay the electricity and the water.
Right.
All Ray wants to do is to cover those costs. Star Trek Continues nonprofit was made for the purpose of producing this and promoting the series. So it's unrelated to the Neutral Zone. But I hope that people will go to the Neutral Zone studios and, number one, contribute. And number two, we've got an open house coming up in 2 weeks, and I'm going to be down there giving tours personally. We've got another one lined up in February. And you can go to Neutral Zone Studios website and sign up for a time to fly on down to Jacksonville, Florida, and drive a simple 25 minutes up I-95 to Kingsland, Georgia. It's a great little town with plenty of restaurants and stores and hotels. And I love that little town. We always loved bringing our production team in to shoot episodes, and we'd all stay in the same hotel and eat at the same restaurants. And I'm going to be going down in 2 weeks to give tours,
Awesome.
Guided tours of the sets. So,
Well, I'm going to try to make it one of these days.
I hope you can, man, because let me tell you something, bro. Nothing compares. If you are a Star Trek fan, especially a childhood Star Trek fan, it's like stepping into a dream, Patrick.
Awesome.
It is the most euphoric and beautiful dreamlike experience you could ever imagine. We've had people fly in from all over the world to walk through those sets. And when the doors open at the end of the corridor and you're looking down that bending corridor and you're walking down the corridor into sick bay and back down the corridor right into the transporter room, it is like, I mean, I've seen people just in tears as they walk through it, because it's like stepping into a television show. It's like nothing else.
Well, that's great. Vic, I think our time is coming to an end. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this.
My pleasure, Patrick. Thank you for having me. Like I said, I always appreciate the opportunity to talk about Star Trek Continues. So much love, so much work, so much passion, creativity went into making this series from so many people. I mean, not just me. I kind of was the ringleader who rounded everybody up and brought it together, but everybody involved, from makeup to wardrobe to sets to props to script writing to acting to camera, lighting, on and on, sound, everybody involved brought so much passion and love to the screen. And I think it's pretty apparent when you watch it.
It really does show. And I've, like I said, I very much enjoyed the whole thing. I appreciate you taking the time. Long and prosper, my friend.
Absolutely. And to you, my friend. We'll hope to see you at the studio soon.
Take care.
Take care, man.